This is Dr. David Schein, and welcome to Business Law 101. A few things to look at on jurisdiction. So we introduced to you on Tuesday the general concept of jurisdiction. Here's a little bit more specific consideration. First of all, the court has to have subject matter jurisdiction. That's mostly what we talked about on Tuesday, is that it has to be something that falls within the jurisdiction of that court. Now, in addition, the court has to have personal jurisdiction, meaning it doesn't do you any good to file a case in North Carolina if everybody's in another state and you can't get them to North Carolina in order to respond to the case. So personal jurisdiction is important also. A summons is what is served on you telling you, hey, you've been sued, you need to show up in court. So one of the things is I want to mention to you something that has kind of a colorful name. It's called the long arm statutes. And how this works is if you're sued in another state, how does that law firm get you into this case? I mentioned to you a real situation which didn't turn into a lawsuit, but could have. When I moved from Richmond, Virginia to Houston, Texas, moved back here in the summer 2013, a friend of mine drove my car and I drove my van down here. While we're driving, a beautiful day like today, we're driving through North Carolina. Actually, it started in Virginia. We went into North Carolina line, past the state line. A weird guy in a pickup truck started harassing my friend. Now, remember, he's driving my car, but he's driving along. He's not trying to play games with this guy, but this guy was very aggressive. And my friend would try and stay away from him, and the guy would maneuver his pickup truck to block my friend. And I'm in the van, which of course I have a high visibility. I'm watching this happening in through my front windshield. But suppose there had been a big car accident as a result of this clown. And so it happened in North Carolina. It would have happened in North Carolina. I'm now a Texas resident. My friend is from Virginia. Suppose, where would you put the case? Well, the case, if this guy caused the accident in North Carolina, the case would probably happen in North Carolina. So in order to get the people there, you would file long arm jurisdiction. And the way that's done is you file the case locally. The local clerk of the court sends it to the Secretary of State. Secretary of State sends it to the Secretary of State in the state where you want the person to be served. And then that Secretary of State sends it to the local courts there to have it served on the person. So that's how you get jurisdiction over people who are not in your court. But remember, the person can also say, hey, I'm not responsible for anything that happened in North Carolina. Come get me. Now, one of the reasons you may not want to do that is because if the court awards a default judgment against you, the court may do almost the same thing as the long arm statute, is perfect the judgment in North Carolina, send it up to their Secretary of State, send it to Secretary of State in Texas, send it to the local court here, and enforce that judgment against you here in Texas, judgment from North Carolina. So you need to be aware of the fact that if you've been served and you cannot get out of the case, that you may have to answer the case in another state. Again, that's long arm jurisdiction. In order to get sued, you've got to have minimum contacts. I picked the case of the car accident on purpose, since that would be considered minimum contacts. If you're in a big car accident in a state, yes, you have a valid reason to be sued in that state. And then notice general jurisdiction, defendant resides in the state. That's separate. Specific jurisdiction is what we're talking about in the North Carolina hypothetical, because there was a particular contact in that state, the hypothetical car accident, to cause you to be subject to jurisdiction in that state. So again, that's hypothetical. Fortunately, my friend did not get wrecked by this crazy pickup truck driver. And by the way, how we settled things down is I got him to pull off the road. We went into a rest stop and just chilled for a few minutes. And when we got back on the road, as we're heading down the highway, we saw this guy being arrested by the police. So we were pretty happy about that. So we were glad we got out of the situation without having any automobile damage.